Hello and welcome to Read and React, presented by Fable Table. I am Nick Bowen, and joining me as co-host is the lovely Shannon. Hi, Shannon.
Hello. Hi, everybody.
I think that might be the first episode of Read and React where you haven't peeked out and and Discord has cut you off. So well done.
Excellent.
We're learning.
Excellent.
We're getting
It
better.
only took however many episodes. I'm proud of us.
8 episodes of this. not to mention all the other streaming you and I have done together.
Ever. Yeah, absolutely. I understand. I'm the problem. I get it.
It's not you. It's Discord. Discord is the problem. Discord isn't built for people like you with the most infectious, joyful, but also slightly high pitch tone.
Fair and welcome. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Today we are continuing our read of Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. So warnings for spoilers up through chapter 27. That is all of part 1 of book 1 of Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is it. The last few chapters of part 1. There's a literal break in the book where it says part 2 after chapter 27. And in fact, chapter 27 itself features a small break that I haven't seen anywhere else in the book. We'll get to that, of course. And as always, a content warning for gore, violence, drug, and alcohol use. There is definitely references to gore and violence in these episodes and reference to alcohol at one small point. And cigarettes. Well, one. The
Not
last
me
one.
throwing up my devil horns. Rock on, y'all.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love this fucking
yeah. So to recap where we left off last time, just to kind of recenter ourselves, Carl and Donut were they had chosen to go all in terms of getting to the a staircase to the second floor. They were all in to help these Meadowlark elder care facility folks fight the giant rolling ball in that maze. A reminder that not all staircases are guarded by bosses, but all burrow bosses and above do guard staircases. So Carl is on this kind of moral intrinsic motivation to do it this way so that he can help these people get down to the next floor, which is going to continue to come up as a theme that like, you know, how am I going to live with myself, or exactly. what you know, what decisions can I make and what decisions can I not make because of who I am. And we'll maybe get a little bit of a window into why that is as well.
I do love that. Because it's not. He very much wants to survive, but it's also about like, can I live with myself if I make the decision to not help these people?
Right.
And he's
how
like,
I survive matters.
He's not going out of his way to be a do-gooder. He's not going out of his way to be like, I will save you, Fair Maiden. Like, that's not his shtick.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, these people are fucking helpless. Holy shit. All right. Well, I gotta help him, I guess. Like, he has to. It's a compulsion.
I mean, it is in a sense, yes, but this will also come up, and we can talk about it more then. But he explicitly at one point in these chapters says, I'm worried about how much time is left, and I don't feel like I have any other options anyway.
That's it. Two things can be true.
so if maybe he had more time, he might be more willing or less willing to risk his neck and more willing to go out and try and find other solutions. But if he did that, I think he would also try and lead these elder horses to water, so to speak.
Absolutely.
I don't think them
all with him.
I think he truly cannot just like let these people go when they have a chance.
It's the people who are helpless that he is like, he can't stop reaching his hand out, you know? So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How did you, just overall impression?
Yeah, let me finish my recap of last time, and then I'll tell you my
Oh,
impression of these chapters.
got it.
So they're all in on fighting this rolling ball boss. As a reminder, and this image kind of continued to stick through my mind through these chapters. So this also gives you a sense of like what I was thinking about from the past whole bit of the book as we were looking into this is like, yeah, in episode 2 of Dungeon Crawler World Earth, there was another like group depicted taking on a burrow boss, like 20 people, and they all died or were turned to stone and will die when the floor disappears. And yeah, just the idea of not having seen a burrow boss fight before, being very, very nervous for the group. Carl and Donut went to go train and come up with a plan. They found a neighborhood with a bunch of troglodytic lizard people and went to a basically 24-hour fitness and fought a neighborhood boss there, just the two of them. They thought it was going to be level like 7, maybe 8, and I think it was like a level 9, which was higher than them. They managed to win, but Donut had to go into full Wolverine mode to save Carl. Wolverine mode meaning diving in and slashing with her nails, her claws. She got completely covered in blood and used the opportunity to mock him with a death's door monologue because she was very low on health, like a sliver of health, but they did win. And she basically used that as an opportunity to be like, I did what you asked and I went with the claws and this is what I get. Oh, the mortal coil is shed. It was very funny. And it did leave us on kind of like a very silly note of hope going into these chapters. These chapters are phenomenal. I really, really loved these chapters. Not only are they extremely fast paced and it just doesn't let up even like after the fight is over. But there's just some really elegant writing, really great, quick characterization, great exploration of some of the themes, and just like where Carl's head is at and ethics are at. It's really fun. And for a type of premise where you think, oh, a visual medium of engaging in this content of like watching boss fights in a dungeon would be way more fun and engaging. Matt Dinniman does a great job with his fights of keeping the tension really high, of knowing when to drop details. And I had a really fun time with these chapters.
There's something wonderful about like his action scenes. Like some action scenes I can read and I'm like, this is good. But then like his specifically, like as I read them, the only thing I can liken it to is like listening to a really exciting song on the radio and then speeding. Because the music is getting you fucking pumped and you're just like, oh, I just gotta cut loose. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I just want to put my foot down. Absolutely. Like it just makes you, I was like tearing through them. Just could not, I just wanted to like, but it's like you want to savor it, but you're like, oh my God, what is going to happen next? So yeah, dude, like this is like the intro to like big fight. I feel like.
After our last recording, I was like, oh, I'll read the next chapter. Like I'll get myself, a taster to get into it. And I stayed up and I read the next 3, like all 3 of these chapters that we're going over that night. Nice. And I was just like, I had to like wait for my adrenaline to come down to go to sleep. I was thinking about it the next day and I was like, I'm so excited to reread these chapters in 2 weeks when I need to make my notes. I had like been highlighting sections, and I added a couple notes in Kindle. But yeah, I had a fun time earlier today, like rereading and listening to the audiobook of it. Very, very fun. Yeah. What about you? Anything you wanted to add about these set of chapters?
Specifically these set of chapters, I think that we ended it in like a really good place because we're introduced to it's the lead in for who will inevitably become another very important character.
Yes. I
So
think if you want to
this was
rip the Band-Aid off, that's fine. I think
well,
it's
Odette.
yes. Odette? Odette?
Odette.
Odette.
Hmm.
Interesting. I always thought it was pronounced Odette. So I think we may have heard of this character before.
Oh yeah.
We have the show Dungeon Crawler World, which is the main series, like the streamable, like the actual content of the dungeon, and then there are like kind of side shows. Whether or not they are by the corporation hosting the current season is not clear to me, but Dungeon Crawler After Hours with Odette is one of these side shows, and it's the show that Donut has been desperate to get on because they like interview basically the celebrity crawlers.
Yep.
And I'm fine with spoiling this for the listener right now, because I think it's really cool to know where the part one ends, and these chapters end, and how these 3 chapters kind of like lead you to believe that they are not going to get interviewed, or like continue to like make you feel like, yeah, right, Donut, that's not going to happen. And then it does, which just makes it all the better. And it's just, I think we can then, now that it's out, we can talk about why the writing is so good, and some of the things that Matt Dinniman does here. But yes, we didn't meet Odette here. We met an associate producer of that show, Lexus.
Yeah, that's her assistant.
Yeah. But we get the nod from this new character that like they've done it. The big they've done it leaves part 1 in such a cool place, because like Donut's main quest is achieved and completed, or at least it's going to be.
Oh yeah.
And it's very cute. Carl also gets a win, which we will talk about here. Should we dive in?
Yes, please.
Okay, so chapter 25 opens up immediately where we picked up, or where we left chapter 24. Donut has had her like I'm dying monologue and then healed. Carl has said like you're the worst, or whatever it was he said, and they start looting. They get another neighborhood map. And much like in the Goblin Workshop, Carl begins grabbing everything that isn't bolted down. Literally everything he says. Weight bars, weight benches, weights, exercise equipment, like your yoga balls, your Elasta bands, just everything that's there. He even goes back out to the main lobby and starts grabbing like the office desk,
filing cabinets.
Filing cabinets, office supplies, like files and paperwork, a laptop whose battery is dead, and Donut, who is desperately trying to get the quote carry amount of blood on her off, is like, what are you doing? Do we really need all this? And his response is, you never know what you're gonna need, and it only takes a couple seconds. And he like picks up a filing or some sort of cabinet, and he like stores it, and then he goes back in and he's like, hey, if you pick something up, everything that was inside of it also goes into your inventory and is like manageable. And because Yeah, and categorize. And because his strength is so high, he can, well, also donuts too. But like he can pick up huge pieces of furniture and really heavy things, and just like collect a bunch of stuff all at once. So it is quite efficient. He even pulls out like a liquor bottle that was within the cabinet. He's like, yeah, like I didn't know that I picked this up, but here it is. And the other thing we learn immediately following this is that they have hit level 9. And there is a vast expanse of XP needed to get to level 10. They don't really get into the numbers very much of XP. I think there's a little bit that we've seen of like numbers wise XP, specifically to do with like the cookie and how innocuous the cookie in one of the safe zones was, and compare that with like a level 2 mob. But that's like all we've gotten on XP wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get much about damage. We learned that skills like either will add a percentage or multiplier to damage, or other checks, but we aren't getting a lot of numbers, which is fine. I don't think we need to be doing the math on a lot of things. I think it is cool when we get like loot to see like, oh yeah, you know, this skill is now up. You know, first impression skill is now level 5. And you know, +1 to dex, +2 to con, like that stuff's fun and fine. And it does go to explain some things, particularly some things that we learned about in the immediately next scene, which is they go back to a training guild and hang out with Mordecai. Mordecai is really impressed that they managed to kill a level 9 boss by themselves. And there's kind of this statement that Carl makes that we kind of spend a lot of this scene looking at from different angles. And that's Carl saying, not knowing what we're going to face sucks. I thought we were going to fight a lower level boss. We didn't know what it was. We didn't know its abilities. We didn't know how high level it was going to be or what we should do. And we kind of like examine this question of like, you know, do you not know what you're going to be facing, and does it really suck that bad? Because Mordecai immediately goes, well, let's go over some notes from all of your previous boss fights. We can do that, which is new. We didn't know that he could do this. He like remarks on how great it was that they immediately killed a goblin boss just by blowing it up. He thought that was really clever. And then he makes this comment, oh, the juicer you just fought. I've never heard of that one before. And this statement really bothered me because it is basically brushed off and moved past so quickly. But Mordecai is someone that has been doing this for centuries, and seems like someone who has seen it all. So to see that it's not, you know, new mechanics and them trying new game systems isn't new, but we learn later that a lot of human culture and other cultures of other seeded civilizations basically are provided to seed worlds so that those societies can integrate with the syndicate better, but also makes the crawl obvious because presumably now, oh, that explains why goblins make sense to everyone watching this show. It isn't just an Earth thing. Goblins are a syndicate thing. They are universal. Bad llamas, maybe universal. Or possibly. You know, yeah, or like, you know, tall quadruped animal that is bad. Exactly. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So the fact that this is just like stated like, oh, a boss I've never seen before. Oh, well, and then they just immediately move on. It has me wondering like, that's something I should worry about.
No, I think it just means that maybe like anabolic steroids aren't so much a thing on other human worlds, possibly.
Humans on Earth are obsessed with drugs and putting things in their bodies, not elsewhere, nowhere else in the universe.
Maybe for recreational purposes, but just to get swole, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it could just be that
That's
they're
unique to Earth culture.
yeah, maybe they're just trying something new. Maybe that is the case. But it got me wondering, like, I still don't have answers to why was everything in the getting the dungeon prepared so A, early, and B, not ready. And why are they trying something new when they weren't ready? It's like not all fitting together for me right now. And I'm currently in a place in the fiction where I'm like I keep taking different puzzle pieces and trying to see how they relate to one another. So with some of the other big questions we have, this statement really caught my attention. But we won't linger on it the way I did. Carl, speaking of the juicer, indicates that he thinks the juicer was another like human being from Earth that was fused with one of these troglodyte beings, but was kind of like mentally being influenced or controlled by an AI with their personality still there, basically just playing a caricature of themselves. And as a monster. And Mordecai confirms this. He's like, that's exactly right. This is what they do. Everyone in the universe is learning about Earth culture. There are a lot of things that are universal, he goes on to explain. But, Earth did like develop its own language and a lot of its own culture. So things like the juicer and being juiced up on steroids, that might be something that others haven't seen in any other culture.
I'm ashamed of Earth. Oh my God.
It felt like this was also not a complete thought, like there was more to it, but they were covering a lot of ground in this chapter. So yeah.
I just want to point out that the last time that we saw Mordecai was right after they left to go fight like the goblins. Like right after they left, they fought the Bad Llama, right?
That's right.
This is the first time we're back in a training guild and we're seeing Mordecai. And I want to point out that Mordecai is being a lot more helpful. He's a lot more receptive to working with Carl and Donut. Whereas whenever the dungeon first opened, he didn't even realize that it had opened. One, because it opened early, and two, because he was drunk off his ass.
That is true. Like, he was very distracted.
He was very distracted, and then Donut crapped in his mom's ashes. So, like, this is one of those things where it's like we're seeing a different side of Mordecai. Like, Mordecai is helpful. He can be helpful. And I think that now that Carl and Donut have proven that they weren't going to die immediately, he's more receptive to being like, all right, let's sit down and have a chat. Let's talk about what you're doing wrong. Because he's like, I think he's in one of those positions where it's like, don't name them. don't name them and don't take them home.
Yeah.
You're going to get attached.
15 million of them entered, all the ones you meet will probably be dead. And he's like, all right, well, we're down to like 3 million at this point, 2.5, maybe I should start.
I guess it's okay to get a little attached and to help out where I can. And
or as the dungeon was starting, he was, kind of in his feelings with the whole, like, here I go again, but this is the last time. And now he's kind of buckled down and is like, all right, I got to get through this and do my job. This one's got potential, maybe.
Yes.
Maybe I will.
We're seeing a different side of Mordecai.
Yeah.
Which is really, I think, enjoyable because I really love Mordecai.
Yeah.
Really love Mordecai.
Even though Mordecai really is kind of like the mentor, the sensei figure, I do feel like Carl is the young, full of potential hero or leader that gives other people inspiration. even those who mentor him. I'm very much reminded of like Naruto, and how Naruto is constantly like winning over all of the adults in his life, except for the ones trying to kill him, and even then sometimes the ones that are trying to kill him. And I feel like Carl is that. Like he is a leader in many ways, and I think I'm definitely noticing like this story from Mordecai's perspective sometimes when we see him. Like he does seem to like open up more and more with Carl, and more like see value in trying to actually help him. Yeah. Especially where he's like, oh wow, you took out a level 9 boss on your own. Impressive. Yeah, okay, so here's the whole line I was bothered by, or the second whole line I was bothered by. Mordecai nodded. It's what they do. Right now across the universe, every eye is focused on Earth. Programs about your culture are reaching all the corners of the galaxy. The bosses are a part of that. It's like this every season. Anyway, let's look at your performance. This feels like it's an incomplete thought. Like, so is this like they're learning about Earth because now Earth is joining the galactic community, kind of? Is it because people are just obsessed with these, you know, third world planets that they've never heard of and just curious about them? And this is what entertainment is, and how the masses are kept busy?
Yes.
It feels like the final dots have not been connected here.
I feel like it's all of those things. Absolutely.
Yeah. And Mordecai's just like, we can talk more about this later. Like, but yes, you have 8 hours or you know, a day to kill this boss. Let's work on this and stick to the question at hand. So yeah, I think this is all great writing. There's all these like statements that are begging other questions that we'll get to later, or not. In the case of like the juicer, that's a new one to me. But yeah, I'm constantly wondering like what isn't being said here? What is this going to connect to in the future? So the first note that Mordecai gives Carl is, hey, remember when you took that huge weight bar and you like unclipped it and took the weights off one end and swung it at the guy and hit him with it? Yeah, your punch does the same amount of damage. Like you do not have a high skill in this. There is no value to it. It's not an enchanted weapon. Your fist does as much damage as an enchanted weapon with all of your buffs. So like, it might be inconvenient and it might hurt your hands, but it is the best. It'll be faster. It'll be as strong. He also then goes on to talk about their scrolls of confusing fog that created that fog and that mist that monsters could not see through, but crawlers could. I think they lasted, if I remember right, like 10 seconds for him or something, 12 seconds maybe.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
It was a very pathetic amount of time. I have it here somewhere. Oh no, that's a cooldown. 15 seconds is how long it lasted. He said, hey, yeah, let your caster use those. Her intelligence is way higher. They'd last 120 seconds. Like 6
Instead
times
of like
longer.
15 or yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So and so like your stats have an impact in combination with items and other like interactions with the system. And Carl goes, oh, is that why Donut's like cooldown for using potions is really low or much longer than mine? Because her constitution is really low or much lower than mine. And Mordecai snaps his fingers and says, you're exactly right, boy. So we learn, like we were exposed to the impact of some of these system interactions, and I think I brought them up last time, and I like had thoughts on this, and apparently so did Carl, and we were both right. And then Donut gets a little bit of vindication here, though she is too distracted by the blood soaking her fur to even acknowledge it. Mordecai says, yes, Donut's melee is incredibly strong for this floor, but it's going to catch up to her. Like, she will not be able to just clobber monsters in future floors, and she's incredibly squishy. She doesn't have the armor. She doesn't have the health for this. She's
just in the wrong body.
Yeah, he says she's in the wrong body for melee. She could choose a new class or race to get into the correct body. And here is her reply.
I am already one of God's most perfect creatures, so I won't be changing race when the opportunity arises. I was born a cat, and I will die a cat. In fact, I'm going to have to insist that Carl choose a cat race as well.
I am not going to change into a cat. In fact, I've been thinking about it, and I decided I'm going to stick with human.
Yes, she is one of God's perfect creatures.
Most perfect creatures.
It's
Absolutely.
fantastic. Yeah.
And then she's like, Carl, you should be a cat too. I love it.
Carl is not having this, but this little running gag does come up later. Yeah, this particular line of thought of like Donut's melee, which Carl was like pulling teeth trying to get Donut to do, which did save his life, is now being advised not to do that until she changes bodies. If she changes bodies, to which she says, I won't. Mordecai makes a comment about her dodge. Again, because she has very little armor and very little health. He says yeah, just keep up the dodging, and your skill will increase. He says something like it'll be easier when you reach level 5, which he does not elaborate on. I'm not really sure what that meant. Maybe the system will handle some of her body's movement for her, or she'll be able to just think acrobatics and just her body will respond to I don't know. But
maybe it'll become an autonomous action.
Yeah, maybe the way I've been imagining she can run on walls just around. She will be able to do. I don't know. Then they arrive at the really important question. Carl he explains the situation with the Meadowlark folks and asks for advice on the Burrow Boss. Mordecai suggests the following. Go find another staircase.
Pretty much.
He says it is absolutely insane to consider 6 people taking on a Burrow Boss. Carl says, look, I respect that, but we have very little time left. I don't think we'd be able to find one or guarantee find one that wasn't also protected by our Burrow Boss. And what he also doesn't say is I have an ethical obligation. Can you give me some advice on the Burrow Boss as requested? And Mordecai says, I can't. There are rules I must strictly follow. We can go over notes of past fights, but we can't talk about monsters that you haven't fought and beaten. That is considered cheating. You don't want to see what they do to cheaters. And it's here where Mordecai says it's madness to think of 6 players fighting a Burrow Boss. I wrote the note here, having already read this. Good thing they'll have 7. Spoiler: 7. Someone joins them. Carl continues to press for help. He's like, anything, please. I'm so desperate. And then Mordecai, and here is where I think we really get Mordecai on his A game, not being super drunk or distracted or emotional. He kind of goes into a bit of a counseling mode. And I definitely could relate to what he was doing, having been a counselor for students on academic warning, and an academic advisor for college students, and helping them grow as people, and studied a lot of counseling skills. He starts asking leading questions, he offers challenge and support. he starts asking like, well, what did you notice about this boss? How did, like the first one, the hoarder, did that have anything similar to like the bad llamas, the spitting bad llamas? And Carl's like, oh yeah, their throat. I punched the llama's throat and he like exploded in his throat, and I was choking the hoarder and bugs couldn't spawn. And he's like, exactly, you fool. Most monsters and bosses have weaknesses. For the llamas and hoarder, it was their throat. For the juicer, it was those egregiously large-sized veins full of blood that Donut took advantage of when the boss had very little health left anyway. Oftentimes it's obvious, but there will always be clues. Exploit these. And this is something that sticks with Carl. He repeats to himself several times, there will always be clues. There will always be clues. And that is kind of what guides him as he begins to concoct a plan. Anything to add?
No, that was like, you covered it. That's one of the great things about this in particular is how helpful Mordecai is in this moment.
Yeah.
Because he realizes that he's like, oh my God, they might actually have a chance. I have to, it is. And I think, in the same way that Carl feels that he has a moral obligation to these people who are elderly, and he's like, can I live with myself if I don't help them? I think maybe Mordecai is also having one of these moments with Carl and Donut, who are out there trying their goddamn best. They're trying not to die. They're following his advice, somewhat. They're doing the damn thing, and he's like, all right, this is my moral obligation. I will help them be better. They're asking for help. I have to help them. I just, oh God, there's so much I want to tell you, but Mordecai he's stepping up. He's
you can tell
there's more to come with Mordecai. And it's so hard for me not to spill things. Okay, I'm going to stop. Yes, it was an excellent chapter.
Yeah. So Carl's kind of last thought here before he shifts his focus to the loot is, there will always be clues. What did we know about this burrow boss? And he then says, I thought about that as I sat down and examined my new achievements and boxes. So we shift out of the internal monologue and internal thought process of Carl as he is concocting a plan. And we will not return to it until it is happening. We will review how he came up with the plan as it's happening in the next chapter or two, but we do not get to experience the plan genesis, which I think is really interesting.
That's good writing.
I think it's really great writing. It leaves us sorry, go ahead.
Show don't tell. I was gonna say show don't tell.
Exactly.
Whenever I was in college and I was writing, is it better to tell someone and then I was gonna do this and then I did it?
Yeah.
Or is it better to explain that action as it's happening?
Yeah.
How you anyway.
I remember as we've played some Forged in the Dark systems, role-playing games where your characters, you don't have items that you track on your character sheet. You just have a list of items that you can have, choose from in the moment. But what you have to pick before mission is how much load do you have? How obvious are you that you're carrying a lot of stuff? And because you don't have this list of all the equipment that you chose to bring to a mission, but instead you get to choose in the moment. Oh, in this moment, I have these cool credentials, like a forged document or something. It makes you look really cool and prepared. And I think by not showing us all of the 1,000 ways he chose not, or figured out how to not come up with this plan, and instead what he did end up coming up with, I think is really cool because we get to experience it in the moment. It leaves us in suspense. It makes Carl seem clever, and it keeps us in suspense during the plan when we don't know what the next step of the plan is and what parts of the plan are going well and not going well. Because we don't know. So it's just it in the next chapter and here creates a lot of suspense because we're like, we want to know the plan.
Tell me.
Yeah. But yeah, then we shift to loot and achievements. So I'm gonna just kind of like graze through this because there's quite a bit. A lot of Carl's skills have leveled up, including Smush, Iron Punch. He and Donut both got achievements for having less than 10% health when a boss died. Donut got one for less than 5% because she was that low. Donut, I don't know if I've mentioned this because I thought it was such an innocuous detail, but it keeps coming up. There's a lot of common things that they get, including, like pet biscuits and food and potions and stuff. They also get torches. And Donut cannot fucking stand torches. She is always hissing at them, and I'm not clear why. It hasn't come up.
I think it's just because it's the same reason. Like it's because she keeps getting them instead of other loot.
Yeah, she doesn't see a value in them.
Exactly. She's like, I've already got a torch. What the fuck do I need another torch for?
I think it's also very funny because she enjoys laying by a fire. They could, in a safe zone, they could light one and set it right next to their cot. And she could sleep by a fire there. She would love that.
Probably. She's a little too close to it right now to see that potential.
Yeah. Can't see the fire from the torches. Donut gets a new spell scroll to learn called Puddle Jumper, which allows her to teleport herself and 3 others to a space within line of sight. Think this is really great for crossing a bridge that has broken, or across a lava lake, or across a chasm. There's some other details about it that I don't think are that important, but Mordecai says it's a really valuable spell. If you can get it to high level, it's almost as good as teleport, which is like the best skill in the dungeon, he says, I think. Carl, between the two of them and their low health achievements for beating a boss, they get 17 healing scrolls, which are better than their current options because they are instant cast and can be used on each other. Whereas Carl's healing spell can't be used on Donut, and Donut has a low or a very long cooldown for healing potion. Or potions in general, and she's constantly using mana potions on boss fights, not healing potions. Carl gets an achievement called 2 chicks at the same time for killing 2 mobs by crashing their bodies against one another, and that being the form or the damage done to kill them. For that, he gets a brawler box. Which contained something, I don't remember what. Donut got like a +2 dex ring or bracelet. The boss box, Carl opens and gets Enchanted Shuriken of Bloodlust. It's a set of 100 of these shuriken or ninja stars. And the Bloodlust effect is every monster damaged by one of the shuriken in this set increases the damage that the set as a whole does to monsters of that type by 8% per hit. Carl suspects that this is additive rather than multiplicative or compounding. Mordecai goes glossy-eyed, checks his like the GM notes or something, and he's like, no, it is compounding, but they're extremely fragile, so meh. It will take a while to get their power really high against a certain mob type, and not to mention all the practice throwing them and getting your skill up and having to recollect them. And
also they're really weak.
Yeah,
They're
like yeah,
very-
they
they're
break.
chintzy.
They break
Yeah,
really easy.
exactly.
I think at one point later when he's showing the Meadowlark people one, he like throws it, it chips, and the shuriken itself doesn't break, but they're all red with the magic of the enchantment. But then like if it gets chipped or cracked, the enchantment just goes away, and
Yep.
it's mundane. So I love that this is just like it's red and then and then move past really quickly and thought of as like, it's okay. When, and I'm gonna once again spoil it, this item is key to their success against the burrow boss. And it is not Carl that comes up with this part of using these in the plan. Which I think really, really goes to show he is far better off with these Meadowlark people because they're also very capable, even though they may not seem so. So another theme I'm kind of sensing here is like diamonds in the rough in this whole kind of last little arc of part one.
Unexpected allies and unexpected like boons.
Value, yeah. Speaking of value, Carl gets his second determined value potion. The first one let him sort items. The first level of the skill let him sort items in his inventory by value, but not see their value. Level 2 appears to do nothing. He suspects he needs a third level to see values of items. Yeah. So, we kind of just like put all this in our long-term storage, so to speak, until it comes up, which for the shurikens is actually quite quickly. And then the star of the show, that brawler box that Carl got, includes an enchanted war gauntlet of the exalted Gruul, which is also, it also specifies right-handed. It's not reversible, unfortunately. +3 strength while in fist mode. +1 dex, +2 skill levels to Iron Punch, which every level, as a reminder, Iron Punch is 10% damage from your fist. When when using your fist as an attack. 1 skill level to Powerful Strike. Every level of Powerful Strike multiplies damage done when not wielding a weapon. So if you have 1 level of Powerful Strike, double your damage. If you have 2 levels of this, you're doing an additional 200% for a total of 300 damage or whatever. I guess if you're doing 100 damage, you'd be doing 300 with 2 levels of Powerful Strike. Math is confusing.
It's hard, but
the gauntlet also adds a 2% chance to stun enemies on hit.
This is an awesome tool. That he's gotten.
Yes, it is. Carl has been hurting himself every time he punches something and feeling it. Now he won't, which is phenomenal. There's one other aspect of this item that actually begins a sort of other conversation, which does some more world building for us, because it is called the Gauntlet of the Exalted Gruul. And the item reads that if you, well, I'll let Mordecai.
Item is a wrist bracer that transforms into a spiked war gauntlet made of orcish steel when the hand is shaped into a fist or wields a hilted weapon for more than 2 seconds at a time. This item on its own does not negate the bare-knuckle skill bonus. Warning! If you use this weapon to strike adherents of the war god Gruul, you have a 1.5% chance to transfigure your target into the deity himself. Trust me on this. You don't want to do that. A bigger, redder warning. Remove this item before you jerk off.
So silly. So yes, there's apparently this other effect where if you attack an adherent of the god Gruul, you might turn them into Gruul. So Carl goes, what the fuck is this talking about, Mordecai? Who are the worshippers of Gruul? He explains anything that you'd consider kind of like an equine class, horses, centaurs, teak-belongs, maybe even that bad llama after the 3rd floor, he says. those are all equine classes. They also wear blue makeup. Gods specifically, worshippers of Gruul specifically will wear blue makeup smeared on themselves, or won't stop talking about wenches and dying gloriously in battle. But there's always tells when there are creatures that worship a god. So, just look out for worshippers by a motif. And then he pauses and says, just so you know, gods are not real in this game. Does that really make a difference? I asked. Mordecai was suddenly solemn, and I didn't know why. He looked at me, intense. You said you worry that some of those bosses and mobs are like you, here against their will. He pointed downward, indicating the lower levels. That's not always going to be the case, especially later on. Remember that. There are no gods here, just those who pay for the privilege. Do people get to pay to be gods in this game? Do people get to pay that premium Patreon tier and just get to be a god in a death game?
I mean, you've opened that door, so
that's what I'm imagining. I'm imagining the Hunger Games, but the rich people get to come in, and not only do they get to pay to send gifts and weapons and supplies to the tributes, but they also get to participate while with a game shark enabled so that they can't die.
Exactly.
Yikes. This is scary and weird and creepy. It
is. And I think this is and I feel like I keep saying this, but this is also a really important interaction here. This conversation is very important because it will come up later. I'm not spoiling anything by telling you this because you've already hit the nail on the head.
It's obvious it's going to come back later.
Absolutely.
Why is it on the page if it's not going to come up later?
And a couple of times prior to this in earlier chapters, they had mentioned something about other gods or whatever, but not until after the third level. It's always you'll see this, but not until after this point. So at some point, that gods will be important in this game. Yeah. And, just like how you can, it's that little kiss of foreshadowing that allows us to oh my God, someone's actually going to be a god. And it just gives you a little hint of how fucked they're about to be. Mm-hmm. They have full mod powers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Or there's no limit. Yeah. I mean, who knows how they'll be able to affect the it's not just quests and social interactions, but we already know that those who are willing to pay can sponsor and bestow items and loot. So who knows what someone paying to be a god can do and how they can impact the outcome of the game.
With enough money, you too can be a part of your favorite game show.
Yeah.
Yeah. For some of these people who these sponsors, it's oh my God, I'm a celebrity. Don't you remember? I was this god on this season. It's gross and it's awesome. And I love that this is a mechanic in the game. We also because we're right at the end of the chapter now, but we also get a countdown as to where we are with the population of who, and again, just to drive it home, I know we're 25 chapters in at this point, but this is still level 1. He just entered the dungeon 4 days ago. Right. And all of this horrible shit has already happened.
I know.
There were 13 million people who came into the dungeon, and it's down to what was it? 2,552,000.
I think that actually people. Comes up right at the start of chapter 26, but yes.
That's it? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no worries. I think the only other thing, there's 2 other things. Donut asks, what's a tick belong? And he's like, you know what a horse is? It's that, but meaner. And then the other thing that happens is Carl closes his fist to engage fist mode. And after holding his fist for 2 seconds, like the gauntlet like shifts and like becomes a huge hunk of metal at the end. And this is the problem of Carl's that gets solved. His long-term problem of like hurting himself, because now he's not going to hurt himself. It also he also doesn't lose his bare knuckle bonus, which is every level of that is 25% damage per level to knuckles. He has like 3 or 4 different stats going into his like punch damage: strength, iron punch, powerful strike, bare knuckle bonus, and now a chance to stun on hit. And then his feet, which can smush.
My man's is a tank. I don't know what to tell you, my guy. Like, yeah, his punch is hella powerful.
Yeah. We get actually a really, speaking of the start of chapter 26, which we'll transition to here, there is a really fun opening here. I'm just going to play it and then we can talk about it.
Nice.
Chapter 26. Time to level collapse, 6 hours, 30 minutes. Are you ready? I asked Brandon as we poised at the entrance to the burrow boss chamber.
No.
He said, smiling sadly. He clutched onto his massive warhammer for a moment. It disappeared into his inventory. The giant weapon could only get in the way during the first part of the plan. Donut perched on my shoulder while the others crowded behind us. We didn't have time left for any more training, any more preparation. It was now or never.
So there's a number of things I noticed as I reread these brief sentences and basically first paragraph. This is the first time to level collapse that we've had in quite a while. The most recent one we had heard was in chapter 21 when there was 48 or 47 hours left right after they fled from Frank and Maggie. So they're like 40 hours have passed essentially, almost 2 days. And then I think this brings up for me a couple of things we know about like the transition to the second floor and the second floor itself. I went back and referenced second floor or second stage or stage 2. I basically like looked up every reference to the second floor to remind myself of a lot of the mechanics that will happen. So anyone that enters the staircases before the 6-hour countdown mark goes into stasis until until the countdown reaches 0. But within
Correct.
the 0 to 6 hour window, there is no stasis effect. So
And you get a head start, essentially.
Yeah. So they like if they can beat this boss in the next 30 minutes, they have optimal head start time. And then some of the other like going back and researching that I did found on the second floor, mobs start dropping gold. Watchers can start tuning into specific crawlers on the second floor. There is a monster Mordecai mentioned called Shambling Acid Impalers. And when asked for lamb, Tally said his lamb was taken in preparation for the second floor. Ominous. So those things were more for my like refreshment. And they are not pertinent to today, but the stasis thing I think came to mind because I knew like, 6 hours. There was a thing with 6 hours on the second floor that what's her name? The announcer after the show with all the patch notes kept bringing up. Cascadia, yes. I don't know if we know her name yet, but
You do now.
I do now, and I had looked her up, that character, so I did know that name. We get also a huge time skip. They left Mordecai, they got back, they shared a plan. There is a plan. It has multiple stages. Brandon's hammer doesn't factor into the first part. Like we have just jumped and we are going. This was really exciting and shocking. I think my jaw dropped when I read this first paragraph. Yeah, so like there could have been a lot of thinking, a lot of dialogue, a lot of like them planning and putting an effort to in preparation, and letting character relationships grow as they discuss this plan. We could have gotten more of like Carl instilling hope in all of these people and inspiring them. But like, I think we get to infer all of that at the end of this in seeing how they get through it and their reactions after they succeed. I also think it's a bit of a pacing thing because we have spent half of this book in just 4 days of time, which is fine, especially given that this is a long series, so long form storytelling. I think we could have had those chapters, but I think it's a really cool choice by Matt to just skip right past it, again keeping the tension really high and not cluing in the reader as to what is going to happen or not happen exactly in this boss fight. Yeah, we just learned.
I like that they just jump right in and start kicking ass. Yeah.
That being said, there is immediately a very brief flashback for context that I think adds to the tension. We flash back to Carl and Donut right after talking to Mordecai, sitting in a Taco Bell safe room, watching the third episode of Dungeon Crawler World, where another Bobcat protector, Sebastian, brushes Donut's hair with his own brush. Her insane charisma of 41 caused this level 21 NPC to practically fall in love with her the moment we entered the safe zone.
I love that.
It's so funny. So we flash back to them watching the episode of Dungeon Crawler World Earth, basically for a couple updates on the macro, like what's going on. The episode once again focuses on a couple of groups of crawlers. We see Lucia Marr and her Rottweilers again. We see the woman with a magical crossbow again. I don't remember her name. It wasn't brought up here. And then these might have been shown before, but the episode really focuses on these 3 other really large groups, which includes one group with 150 AK-47 armed African soldiers. I'm immediately dubious of who these people were and the things that they had done in their lives and prior to this dungeon, and I'm very worried about what they'll be doing in the dungeon, especially to other crawlers.
Better not to think about it.
Yep.
Better not to think about it. Just gonna hand wave that one.
Yes. So I think even though we are slamming ahead, there is a brief lift off the gas pedal just to coast for a half a second to remind ourselves that there's some really badass other people out there and huge groups that have done really well. I think it adds to the tension because Carl says, yeah, this episode offered no insight on fighting burrow bosses. There was nothing useful there. In fact, the number of crawlers, and here's where it comes up, is 2.5 million left, basically 2.55 million. Carl is still feeling that loss. He calls it a cataclysm, down from the 14.5 million people that entered. So this is adding to the tension. It's adding to the sense of like, we are not getting help. We're not getting advice. We're kind of on our own. There's no insights to be gleaned here. I think to Donut's goal of like, we want to be on the show, what was it again? Dungeon After Dark with Odette or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's like, okay, here are 5 main groups that the main series keeps highlighting. Surely Odette is going to want to speak to one of these people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But, it's also about like the gimmick of it all. The woman who like the Valkyrie woman, like with the crossbow, the little girl with her two Rottweilers, and then like a pack of
And then like a trained
these
army.
mercenaries.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's like these are people who are immediately like, I gotta know what's going on there.
Mhm.
But Donut and Carl are a dark horse. The man and his cat is also a gimmick.
Yeah.
And people are watching, even though it doesn't appear that way right
Yeah.
now. Not immediately to Donut.
Right. Yeah. And I think Carl highlights like all 5 of these groups are being keenly followed and have already secured stairwells and are just waiting for that 6-hour mark to go down. Like,
Wait, is this where he says it looks like he's like, for all intents and purposes, it looks like they're just fucking moonwalking through the dungeon.
yeah, I think he said that about the 150 soldier army.
I love that.
Much to Donut's, no. Yeah, all of these groups, if the show was to be believed, no, it is all 5 of them. We're just moonwalking their way through the dungeon.
Right. Which is, so like there's something to be said about like the struggles that like both he and Donut have faced and how affected by television Donut really truly is. Because she's not taking into account like the magic of editing. And what things look like cutting room floor, you know what I mean? So it's like they're only presenting like, look at this awesome thing that this person did, but it's also not showing like how fucking hard it was prior to that awesome win that they had.
Yeah.
So like,
yeah.
And Donut's like, look, they can do it. Why can't we? And
yeah. Well,
childish.
I don't know. I think it's cool that Donut's voice has been prevalent. Like we should get on that show. We can do this. We can do this. But then that like kind of waned, and we don't have that voice here because I think that because we don't hear that voice, we are not feeling inspired that that's going to happen. And so it comes as a shock later that they were aspiring to this. Because it feels like they kind of had I don't know. Without that voice, it feels like they've lost a bit of confidence, Carl and Donut.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And the stark contrast with here are these groups that are doing so fucking well that they're moonwalking and we are just struggling here. Yeah, I think like we hit the gas pedal. We are like full steam ahead. And then we pause for a moment to remind ourselves and really, I don't know, the emotional effect of this little flashback is huge for me. I love it. They don't even go into like any of the like updates from, what was it, Cascadia?
Cascadia.
Yeah, I mean, there's like another like, oh yeah, a warning about using hallways as bathrooms. And then there's a bit of a cut forward to Carl being like, and then I showed up and told everyone like I had a plan and they were just shocked that I had like come back at all. They had written me off as someone that was just going to leave them to their fate.
Right. And I think that's wonderful. I think I think that the fact that they were like, oh my God, he came back, like it gives them hope. It shows that this was the right choice. These people are grateful.
Yeah. Yes.
The help that Carl is offering them, and they're all in.
Yeah.
Whatever plan it is he's come up with, he's like, they're like, he came back.
Yeah.
Let's fucking do this.
I relayed my dubious off-the-cuff plan to the group of crawlers who had all appeared shocked that we'd actually returned. I love that he's like, hey, I've got this plan, and they're like, yeah, you're here? And then they enter. We step across the drawbridge and through the giant archway. Brandon, Chris, Yolanda, and Amani followed. We hesitantly entered the round courtyard to the spiral maze. And then suddenly someone joins them.
You're not doing this without old Agatha!
We don't have room for you, Agatha! Yolanda yelled. Get back, crazy bat! Brandon said. You're gonna get us all killed!
I think that roly-poly is the one that's gonna get us all killed.
Agatha said.
That maniacal laugh is so funny, and I think really captures or really develops the character. Obviously, like
Agatha is such a great weird character.
she is
Like, you're
really
like, what the fuck?
strange.
Just
I
this crazy old homeless woman, and you're like, what the fuck are you doing, Agatha? And she's like, wee! And she just goes flying in. I love it.
I love the choice by remind me of the voice actor's name.
Oh, Jeff Hayes?
Jeff Hayes, thank you. Jeff Hayes makes some really interesting choices of like what her tone is at different moments. Crazy Bat, Brandon said, "You're gonna get us all killed." I read that as angry, but Brandon, the way he read it, it seems more worried. And then the way he read, "I think that roly poly is the one that's gonna get us all killed," is like Agatha suddenly realizing maybe I made a mistake. But later on, she doesn't really seem that remorseful or resentful or worried. So I think maybe I read that line differently. I read it more maniacal and manic than anything. So I think the way that Jeff and I are reading that character's voice in this moment is a bit different.
It's interesting, right? Like the interpretation of the narrator makes a big difference in how you perceive these characters, you know?
Yes.
And I agree with you. I think the first time I read it, I also read Brandon as angry. But I also think that I think that Jeff Hayes in this moment maybe was right. Like the kind of person who is helping these like elder care facility people is not someone who's going to be like, get the fuck out of here, you crazy bitch. Like he's not gonna haul off and like start like abusing this like poor ridiculous old homeless woman who like is just going to go charging into battle. That's not him. That's not his character. That's not his voice. I think Jeff made the right call here, but I agree with you. When I first read that, I read that more as angry than concerned.
Yeah. And you know what?
Maybe because
you
I
can
would be
read
angry.
it. I love being able to read it multiple ways and just like,
Absolutely.
kind of exist in a quantum state of maybe it's one, maybe it's the other, maybe it's both, maybe it's all of the above, maybe it's somewhere in between. I think though, when you are listening to an audiobook, you are being prescribed it in a way that if you're reading it, you can't leave ambiguous. But you do get really fun interpretation and delivery of a performance, and Jeff does a great job. Okay, so the gate slam. There is a lot that happens in this entire rest of this chapter. I have a lot of notes on it, and I'm going to try and move through it as fast as possible. The gate slam shut. We get a cue that things are going to be different. The music is very different, both I think because we haven't seen a burrow boss before, so the music for burrow bosses I think is different. But it also feels like, and we get some kind of thoughts from Carl on this later, that the music that begins to play is specifically designed for this encounter with this specific boss and environment. They get a very fast and frenetic, like all over the place, not necessarily consistent beat and music. He says it's like an EDM beat mixed by a DJ hopped up on Adderall. There is black light, so the lights go out and then black lights come on, neon lights on the ceiling, and a laser show. They're at a rave.
Absolutely. They're at a rave right now.
They're at a rave.
Yeah.
And then they hear something else, which Carl quickly realizes what it is, which is, I think, really important, because Carl's ability to perceive what is happening and respond to it and think quickly is, I think, what saves him in a lot of these situations. He hears like a scraping sound and realizes it is the sound of rock on rock. The walls of the courtyard are sinking, raising, and moving. Which they had not accounted for. And They then get a loud, distorted announcer voice announcing the boss battle. I recorded that one, but then I realized it's not really that exciting. It's just like the boss battle announcer we've had so far with just some fun voice lines. Again, great delivery by Jeff Hayes. They immediately go into a mode of having to shout to communicate. And we get some imagery imagery of like Brandon having sweat on his forehead, Chris and Yolanda looking terrified, Imani with her sword looking grim, Agatha looking oblivious. And I think also, and this is why I think that the voice line delivery of her seeming worried doesn't strike true for me, because here, like a couple paragraphs later, as the room is literally moving and the boss is being announced, she's like picking a hair from between her like eyebrows and looking oblivious. She doesn't seem that worried to me.
She's, mentally not all there. You
know what? You're right. Maybe she's disassociating.
Absolutely. Who among us doesn't, just in a moment of absolute existential and physical dread and, danger, just take a moment to like reflect inwardly and be like, wonder what choices.
I don't want to die with this this unibrow here.
Yeah.
Everything going on around me.
Better be plucking my chin whiskers.
Everything going on around me is out of my control. This I can control.
This is one thing I can do for me. Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. We get a kind of the scene of what is developing kind of shifts. We get a description of like, it's like standing on a subway tunnel platform, but what if the landing is like basically at the same level? I have done this. I've ridden a light rail. In Seattle, that's what the underground light rail the platforms are like a couple of inches up. It's not much. So we get this kind of hectic music. We get worried looks and appearances of characters. The scene is developing, and then the creature zooms by. It looks like flesh, pink flesh. The smells of sewage and rotten meat. We hear grunts and squeals and angry pig noises. Carl and the others, like, as they fleet by, see eyes, hair, tusks, and then something unexpected: flaps of black and white cloth and red sequined fabric.
The Ball of Swine! Level 15 Burrow Boss. Also known as the Pork Chop Express, the Ball of Swine is one of the rarest, most deadly battle formations of the Tuskling. Encompassing at least 30 Tuskling knights and their lady loves, a ball formation requires a specific set of circumstances to create. Combine a gathering of Tuskling aristocracy, add an alcohol-fueled, sexually charged orgy of warlust, and sometimes, just sometimes, the wild, ancient battle magic that permeates their war-torn world casts the spell, forming the ball. The Tusklings, the ruling class of the Orcish supremacy, shape into an inseparable sphere that rolls onto the countryside. The ball of pork won't stop its night of terror until it has crushed the poor, the weak, and the lesser citizens under its unstoppable weight. Plucked directly from a Tuskling high caucus moments after it formed, this particular ball has been transferred here to this dungeon for your entertainment, ladies and gentlemen. The magic of the ball won't allow them to stop until every last drop of crawler blood is squeezed right out of their human bodies.
I was doing a little bit of pantomiming there at the end. Wow, what a description. Quick note, at least 60 Tuskling knights. This is interesting. Mm-hmm. We've never seen a Tuskling. We don't know what a Tuskling is. Assume that's a monster type in the dungeon on the first floor or otherwise.
We know there's some kind of pig, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Or they have pig-like features.
Pig-like qualities. I mean, we apparently just saw pink flesh, hairs, eyes, tusks, and flaps of cloth and fabric. I don't know if this is just like bombastic, silly lore, or actual world building of like factions and politics and political structure of Tusklings in the dungeon. I mean, maybe we've seen the goblins have kind of a hierarchy. They had the shamankas that were their leaders, but above the shamanka was like the chieftains or war chiefs. So I don't see any reason not to believe that there are Tusklings and a Tuskling aristocracy and a Tuskling High Caucus, the ruling class of the Orcish supremacy. So Tusklings are part of orcs, or orcs are parts of Tusklings. Unclear, but it seems like they're building something here. Like they're planting a seed that we could come back to. Probably won't directly come back to, but like showing that something is happening here. Either way, it's very absurd, very scary, very silly. I love the ball of pork won't stop its night of terror. I also love just, I don't know, I was taken out of this thinking about, magic systems. When a sexually charged orgy of warlust happens, during a gathering of Tuskling aristocracy, sometimes the wild ancient battle magic that permeates their war-torn world casts the spell forming the ball. So a magic that is cast by the world itself, not by a actor, like a person.
Yes.
Anyway, interesting, wild.
You're
cool,
flooded
fun.
with it. It's like
you're just flooded with all of these different words and ideas that we don't have time to make sense of right now, because we got a ball to fight. But of course, bringing us out of the absurdity and back to reality, Donut takes umbrage with the insinuation that all crawlers whose blood are going to be spilled fighting this boss, all of them are going to be human, and it's their blood, human blood will be spilled. She's like, excuse me, I'm feeling ignored right now. Why is it always human crawler this, human crawler that? Quote, why can't it be blood squeezed out of their human and feline bodies?
Right.
Thanks for the comic relief there, Donut.
I love Donut so much.
I feel like Jeff Hayes could at any moment be like, this scene needs comic relief. Donut says something rhetorical or quippy or sassy or pompous. And he could do that at any moment he chose, I believe.
One of the just as a little side note, I think one of the things that's really wonderful about this is that, and I don't know if I mentioned this before, but like the first book was already written, obviously, and I think maybe even the second book was written by the time the first book became an audiobook, and then Jeff started narrating the stories.
Okay.
So it was like after that point when Jeff and Matt were introduced to one another that, then Matt started hearing Jeff's voice in his head as he's writing these characters. Like, he was already writing the third book, but like there are times like where he'll include something in the book, or he'll write something like as a phrase, and he'll and this was like he mentioned this like in an interview, and he was like, I'll just like be giggling to myself thinking about how like what Jeff is gonna think when he has to read this fucking line, and I love that because it's like,
well, it's kind of. Oh, sorry, please.
No, I was just gonna say, like at a certain point, it's like he like the books are still being written, these characters are still being developed, and like now there's this symbiotic relationship between like narrator and author, and I love that.
That's what I was gonna say, is it's kind of like a feedback loop, because my neighbors above me just dropped something very loud, very heavy, probably very scary. It's okay, Nova.
Maybe a body.
Probably. I'm sure it's like a feedback loop, because I'm sure Matt gave Jeff some notes, thinking like, about like, here is what I just have in my head, maybe that's not on the page, or I don't, like, maybe he had an idea like, here's where the character's going, and like what emotions are really important to convey in a general sense, or to highlight with your performance. Maybe he gave that. I don't know. You would probably know better than I, because I haven't listened to any of their interviews or read anything. But yeah, like, I'm sure like they both are thinking about what the other is thinking with the character, and then each other's, you know, art is feeding into the others is great. I love that. Okay. So the walls of this space start moving and shifting, grinding very loudly. The maze is moving and creating, Carl notices, is creating new paths for the ball of swine. We don't like get descriptions of exactly like, oh, the wall to our northeast, you know, this many walls, this long is moving, and these are the one, and here's how everything's shifting. Like, we could get that. It's not very helpful. I think what is being conveyed is, what does this mean? And so we're not left like confused about specifics. But we also get highlighted here that Carl, I just realized I don't have my button for this. Hang on one second while I pull this up. But Carl is like very much observing really strongly and leading in this moment. Let me see. Carl leads. Here we go.
Bodies.
Looking to my left and right, I could see what was about to happen. With the lowering of the walls, a new path opened up, and we were on it. The heavy, pounding music was deliberate. We could no longer feel the oncoming train of the giant pig ball. At its current speed, it would circle around onto us in a minute, maybe less. "Move!" I cried.
So Carl is like recognizing what's happening and the impact of it. He's like, this really loud bassy music that is frenetic and not consistent is like, it is intentionally designed to prevent us from sensing the boss and getting a feel for when it's coming. It's also interrupting our communication and making it like high stress. So like, he's observing this, he's watching this like how the environment is changing, and specifically he begins to recognize the patterns of like, okay, those walls are moving and these are closing behind us, so we need to go there. And he like starts shouting commands, and that is like part of what is happening as this scene develops. They start moving towards a new section. Carl takes out what is just simply described here as spike strips and leaving them on the ground. It is not made readily apparent at this point that the spike strips contain those enchanted shuriken. It is just like they're for us to think like, oh, they're just, you know, trying to get a cheap form of a little bit of damage on the boss. They're going to try and hurt it with traps. Interesting. When I was reading this, I was not connecting those dots, that this was clearly deliberate and what was happening, because the idea of using the shuriken had been so dismissed in the conversation with Mordecai. But we learn that later we will learn during planning that they were like intentionally chosen for part of the plan. And we like, now that we're thinking about it, it's obvious why, because if they have multiplicative effects of increasing damage and there are 100 of them, creating a trap and using the enemy's own movement to cause that damage and start building up stacks of that debuff is brilliant. So Carl barks orders to start moving. The boss barely misses Agatha and her shopping cart by inches. Agatha's cackling gleefully, somehow enjoying the situation. Carl, there's a moment where Carl catches a peek of a face of one of these Tuskar. What were they called? Tusklings. I don't know how we keep getting descriptions of how it's too fast to really get a good look at, but somehow Carl learns that they have 4 tusks crossed over each other and makeup and a corsage in its hair. Okay, I didn't really buy that, but it's like the least important thing to not buy. Huh?
Fair enough. I said fair enough.
Yeah. I think I think Matt just wanted like a moment to show I don't know. It's not like we're not going to see their faces, and he knows that. So I thought it was weird. But whatever. Not a big deal.
How many different ways are there to describe a ball of swine, though? Like, that's the thing. He's just adding a little spice. That's all.
That's fair. I think there's a moment where I think he could have done it, and I will point it out here in a minute. As it rolls over the trap, we see a health bar appear with a small amount of damage. Very, very small. Small enough that I don't think they even see the gap in the health bar, but like, oh, a health bar just appeared. Must have done damage. There are walls raising to block the area that they just came from. We learn in this moment that the plan had not anticipated moving walls. Carl wisely spots grooves in the floor where the ball of swine just rolled, and they are guiding. He recognizes they are guiding the movement, and he sees these all over the field. The field, like meaning the field of battle. Concentric circles on the ground leading toward the center of the arena. There are spots where walls are blocking the path. Obviously, that's where there's going to be movement of walls to get out of the ball of swine's way. There are sections where there's a quick turn where the ball can like change directions, but there's also these lines on the ground where Carl recognizes there's an indicator of where the walls might move, raise, or be lowered. And he immediately shouts out, "We need to find an area flat and wide enough for our redoubt where there aren't grooves." I had to look up what a redoubt was. It is an enclosed temporary defensive encampment or fortification, often in a geometric shape. It's like in StarCraft when you build one of those bunkers.
Yep. I pictured this as like a tortoise shell, but like with a fucked up janky shell. That's like how I pictured this.
That is exactly how he describes it, is an awkward tortoise shell later. He says, look for near... Yeah. I don't remember exactly where, but yeah, he says...
Maybe that's why. That makes sense.
Look for an area with no grooves. Imani, he shouts as he's throwing another spike strip. Imani spots one. She has, I'm skipping over this, but she's been also very observant and on task, ignoring distractions like Agatha.
Imani's got the eye of the goddamn tiger. I mean, is what she's got.
Yes, she's does.
Focused. She's locked in.
Carl notices that the boss is speeding up. He can tell by the Doppler effect, apparently, and drops more trap strips of spikes. Let's do this just like we practiced. Go, Agatha, sit down and don't fucking move. So he's like barking orders. It becomes apparent to us, like, as we suspected, there is a plan. And they've practiced whatever it is they're doing. We just looked up what a redoubt is. They're building something here. Wow, that's not what I was expecting. I don't go into a role-playing game, into a boss fight, and expect to build a structure when I'm not playing a tower defense game. He tells Agatha to stay still, and he picks up her shopping cart and puts it in his own inventory. She shouts, "Thief, thief!" Yolanda yells at her, he'll give it back, just stop. And they all go to work. They start pulling out different braces and pieces that they had already fabricated, using the heavy goblin table and other like tough goblin architecture, whose descriptions I'm sure I glossed over or didn't even read on this show, or maybe even didn't even focus on in while I was reading. Obviously I should have been paying closer attention. They apparently had practiced this for hours and got assembling this structure down to like 20 seconds for the main structure and 20 seconds for the rest. The structure took 5 hours to build. Apparently Brandon calls it, quote, the speed bump. We then learn here Brandon and Chris were not like they weren't nurses or anything at the elder care facility. They were the maintenance men who came in to do overtime really early in the morning or late at night, to make sure that the old people had like the ovens in the kitchen could work so that the staff could make breakfast. That's so sweet and sad. And it's also really great that they did that because this couldn't have happened without them. It turns out Carl brought this idea to them and they're the ones that made it happen. Like they designed it, they fabricated it.
Absolutely.
Because they had the knowledge and how to, as with their skills. Carl probably, like, they would have failed if it had been two other people without those skills.
Yes, absolutely.
So
like,
yeah,
Carl knows his way around a wrench. He used to work on like ships and everything. Like, but this is not his bread and butter. But he did
electrical work. Not
this is not his bread and butter. Like he in a pinch he could rig something together, but not in the amount of time that they had. This is not his bread and butter. So yeah, this would never have happened without their help.
Yes. Yeah, so they start pulling out modular pieces of whatever this structure is, which has been made out of tables and weight equipment and other stuff. To myself, I'm thinking, this donut, this is why you take everything, because if they hadn't grabbed this all, they would have had to make another trip out there. If they could even remember what was out there and if it would be enough. So they create this kind of angled 4-foot high structure that looks like a tortoise shell is what I have in my notes. I don't remember exactly where that is said, but I assure you that is what Carl describes it as at some point.
Here was me thinking I had an original idea. I did not.
Oh, sorry.
Not at all.
Carl said he had thought about they should weld it, but they didn't have a welder, so they used these goblin hand crank drills that basically also like cut out threads as they go for these pre-designed bolts that work with whatever the cranks like used to make the threads. And they also use other weight bearing capable equipment. I wrote here, and this is to your effect of like, and my idea of like, well, yes, Carl has how to, but he really needed these maintenance guys. I wrote, what if a survivor challenge was to build a piece of IKEA furniture to stop a wrecking ball and you had maybe a minute to do it? Yes, Carl, I trust, could make IKEA furniture on his own. I don't think he could design IKEA furniture.
Nope. Not in his purview.
This is true. And then there's another line from Donut that I would have left out if it weren't for the fact that it was referencing one of my favorite things in TV history. Donut makes a Richard Dean Anderson reference, mentioning the A-Team. This is just like something they do on that show, The A-Team, Donut exclaimed when we practiced this earlier. Or maybe MacGyver. The real MacGyver with the hair and the Stargate, not that abysmal remake. So a lot of people
love that.
A lot of people are like, yeah, I grew up with Star Trek. I grew up with, Deep Space Nine. Stargate was the sci-fi show I grew up with. So hearing the reference to Richard Dean Anderson being the original MacGyver and the show Stargate, I was just so pleased here. Apparently, in this flashback, Chris said, "I liked that show." Chris said as he worked, "It was the first and only time I had heard him speak." "Which one? The A-Team or MacGyver?" Donut asked. "Or do you mean the remake? Please tell me you don't mean the remake." Chris never answered. I need to know. I'm so invested in this moment with Chris.
Right? He says the thing and then never speaks again. I'm like, all right, moving on. Oh my God. I love
also,
Chris.
this may be me reading into things. There's this line here. "It was the first and only time I had heard him speak." Okay. This isn't like an ominous, like this is the only time we will ever hear Chris speak. Because that has me worried.
No.
I need to hear Chris's thoughts more now that I know he likes Stargate. Maybe Stargate.
Or
Anyway.
MacGyver.
Or MacGyver, that would also be acceptable. I've never seen the A-Team, so I don't really care. I'm not as invested in that one. So because the structure, everything gets put in place except the last part. They use 5 barbells or barbell poles, the huge ones that you use for like squatting or bench press. That are rated for more than 1,000 pounds each. I wrote, hopefully the boss is less than 5,000 pounds. Meat and bones can be heavy. You never know. Carl starts pulling out these poles and wedging them in really tightly so that they won't move. He apparently learned in their practice, if he like sticks his hand out in a certain way and calls from the inventory, the bar, it will summon it, even if it has to like push other objects slightly out of the way. Just like it will wedge itself in there. I wonder, is this an abuse of the system or will it be considered an exploit? Will it be fixed? It feels like it's one of those things that's like really close to the line.
I mean, we don't. Maybe, but you're right. It does feel like an exploit of it. But they're just using the tools that they have while they have them.
This is true
in every fight, because at any point those tools might be taken away and considered to be an unfair advantage. So, as far as this fight goes, they're not going to stop the action while it's happening.
Oh,
but
obviously
it might be
not.
later.
Yeah. So they start putting in these bars that support the ceiling. Again, this is a 4-foot high structure. We know that Carl's like a 6-foot tall guy, or maybe taller. They are having to crawl around on their hands and knees in this death trap. The plan and the size of this had not accounted for Agatha being here, so they are super squished and they cannot place the final pull. Carl is worried that the ball, the ball of swine, has an attack that might pass through like the grated roof or like cross-hatched roof that they have. But he reassures himself because other bosses they've faced only have had one attack. Carl, this is a burrow boss. You haven't faced a burrow boss. It could have more than one attack. So I wouldn't count on that logic, Carl. So he's worried about stuff like just being able to push through and kill them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then we get a weird flashback that I was not expecting. We've had a couple of other flashbacks. This one I was surprised by. We have a flashback to Carl, young Carl, on a road trip with his parents as a child. His parents, being pieces of shit, as they've so far been described, were fighting in the front seat with Carl in the back. Carl, dissociating as children do and staring out the back window like it's a spaceship, is staring at a truck, a yellow Penske truck that is tailgating them, and is watching it right as they go under a bridge, and the bridge shears the top of the truck right off. His dad's reply is, "That's a shame," and continues driving as Carl's mother yells at his father to stop.
Oh yeah, his dad's a peach.
What the fuck? And that's all we get. And this is placed here because this is what Carl is hoping for.
Yep, that's where he got the idea from.
This is where he got the idea, I guess. The ball, so going back to the advice, there are always clues. Carl thinks about what he knows about the ball rolling around in the maze, and as he's planning and thinking about it, he realizes, yes, the ball fills the hallway floor to ceiling already. And its weakness is, what if we somehow manage to stop its momentum? Because everything it is relies on its momentum and its size and its weight. If it stops, it can't hurt us, right? He wants to pinch it with what I know that Brandon called it, like the speed bump. I'm calling what they've built a doorstop.
Yep.
Carl wants to doorstop this thing. It's here that we learn that all the traps they've been placing have ninja stars attached, the spike strips. The things that we had sort of dismissed as crucial because Matt Dinniman is a clever writer and written something off to the reader, but not to himself. We also learned that the ramp of this doorstop has about 50 shuriken wedged in it as well. And that Brandon had come up with the idea when Carl showed him the shuriken. Good thing Carl chose to show Brandon the shuriken and not just leave them in his inventory and never bring it up, because Brandon was like, no, we need this. Poke that thing 200 times and it will take millions of points of damage per hit. So this is the plan. They create a wedge. They use the shuriken to do a shitload of damage. They start off very small and they build up. Again, for every hit, 8% more damage than the previous hit. And it is right here before they get the last pole in its place, further adding to the stress and tension of the scene, as the plan is fully unveiled, that the boss runs into the doorstop, the wedge, the speed bump. The whole thing shudders and screeches and slides. You know, sometimes when a door is heavy and closing really fast, a door stop will move with the door a little bit before it actually stops it. Well, all of the braces supporting the ceiling pop out of place. There is tons of squealing and the sudden realization we had done it. The ceiling is sagging, but we have stopped it. There are squares of flesh pressing through the openings in the lattice above us of the roof. This is where I think they could have shown a pig's face is being squeezed through one of the lattice.
Probably.
And they are about to be crushed if this thing falls apart on them. So Carl just shouts, "Stab!" And they all are summoning their weapons and attacking. We get that several of them are, where's my note here? Oh, Imani, the highest level of them, has her big ass sword. She is struggling to stab, but I think the rest of them have spears with shuriken lashed onto it or taped on or something. This is very clever. This is, more attacks by the shuriken, which are going to further increase the amount of damage they're doing with them. Carl has one that has 3 of the shuriken taped onto it. Not just 1, but 3. Again, very clever. The music is quickening. They are stabbing. They are worried about being crushed if their thing falls apart. There are bolts popping from their holes. The bolts that are holding all of these pieces in place. The bolts are hitting the crawlers under the structure. Agatha is screaming about her shopping cart. Blood is raining on them. The pressure is just growing. Even being able to read this scene at my own pace, my heart is pumping here. I love this writing. It's so fucking good. And it collapses. It does collapse. The structure holding up the ball of swine that should hold 4,000 or 5,000 pounds collapses. But at the same time, they kill the ball of swine and it pops like a balloon. Pop. I just imagine a very like amidst the like the rave music and the huge bass and all the squealing of the pigs, that there's just like a piercing but gentle pop sound. And 60 or more Tusklings in prom attire, tuxedos and cocktail dresses, start dropping all over the fucking place as the structure collapses around them. Like pieces falling on them, bodies of pigs, these Tusklings falling on them. Carl's spirit gets like knocked away from him. He immediately turns and covers Donut. He sees out of the corner of his eye his mini map just get covered in a sea of red dots. As soon as the dropping falls, Donut takes off and starts shooting magic missiles fucking everywhere. The music's still playing. Carl sees a Tuskling that had landed on the ramp with all the shuriken, which half of them have lost their enchantment. He just steps on it and it starts taking shitloads of damage. And apparently half of the Tusklings like died from the falling on various shuriken or falling on each other or whatever. But I think the stress just continues. Like, this is chaotic. Like, how many Tusklings are everywhere? But fortunately, they are all disoriented, and most of them are Tuskling Knights. And you might look at Tuskling Knights. Holy shit, a Tuskling Knight. Oh, but they're level 4, and also there's more.
Tuskling Knight, level 4. When it comes to the Tuskling, their titles are about as accurate as their dating website photos. The once mighty warriors conquered the Orcish supremacy hundreds of years ago, defeating all the other clans. They are now shells of the mighty warriors they once were. The honorarium, Knight, roughly translates to overweight alcoholic bureaucrat who spends his days making new laws to oppress the poor and his nights drinking and getting pegged. Knights and their slightly more dangerous female counterparts, Tuskling courtesans, are only worthy adversaries when they come together to form an ancient Tuskling battle formation known as a Ball of Swine.
I formed a fist.
I added that extra line. I formed a fist as like, this is Carl's response to there are, 30 knights and there are 30 stronger courtesans dropping everywhere. I'm going. But yes, I think it is very comical that these knights are not actually that threatening, and also we get descriptions of them being very disoriented. So the tension of the scene begins to relieve here, but they're not out of the woods yet. So they get to action. Donut's firing missiles. She gets out of missiles very quickly. Carl orders her onto his back, and Carl starts punching. He is not feeling the punches in his hand, and he just says, yes.
Right.
in his head. The courtesans have red glittering gowns covered in leather straps like a BDSM vest, Carl thinks to himself. The tension of the scene, I think, gets a little deflated by this description of the Tuskling Knights. But then it kind of comes back because Carl looks around. He sees Imani. He hears Imani screaming, sees that she is crying and swinging her sword in two hands wildly, protecting Yolanda, whose health is very low. I believe Yolanda was the one hit by some of the bars popping out of place. So she was not hit by the boss or all of these Tusklings. She was, in fact, injured by their contraption. Agatha. Agatha gets hit by some of the bolts too, I think. Or maybe also one of the poles.
All very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, it is dangerous. I mean, that's goblin engineering for you. We see Brandon swinging his giant maul to kill Tusklings, and apparently lightning is manifesting as he swings. I want to know more about that. Chris is swinging an ethereal magic spear that he can summon with a spell of his that lasts 5 minutes. I want to know more about that. And then Agatha is standing in the middle of this all, watching with her hands clasped together, blood gushing down the side of her head. The stairs are there, surrounded by a red force field. Carl describes this as a battlefield like a 1980s themed roller rink of blood and Tusklings with the lasers and light show and black lights. And then we get this line that ends the chapter that I really love. There were more of the Tusklings than there were of us, but they were shocked and confused, having been transported from their own world to this place. They were weaponless, they were untrained, and they were slaughtered. Oh, I think there is this transition of like chaos and fear and tension and stress of the scene into a bit of control and less worry, because it is a large number of mobs, and that is the scary part, is the numbers. And that kind of deflates the scene. But like seeing that Yolanda, there are some stakes. Yolanda is injured, and we don't know how capable the rest of these fighters are. We've never seen them in combat before. I think then is completely deflated, and we do get this sense of complete domination with this last line. They were weaponless, they were untrained, and they were slaughtered. I think there's one other thing I left out of my notes, which is kind of like Looney Tunesy, which is describing that the Tusklings, as they fell from like the popping balloon of the ball that they were, and kind of being summoned in place of the boss. It describes them falling and landing, holding like wine flutes or champagne flutes that like hadn't spilled a drop, that like the system had assisted them in kind of like landing with their wine intact, or champagne or whatever it was. I think that also deflated from the scene, the tension, and I'm getting mixed messages from Matt as to what I should be feeling in the last little bit here. I remember the first time I read this, again, it was very late at night after a recording. I was very stressed for them, and I didn't remember the scene losing a lot of tension. But when I reread it earlier today, I was like, oh, yeah, they are not in trouble anymore.
No, only the Tusklings.
Yeah. So anyway,
it's the only weapons they have against these like people who, I enjoy that to a degree. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I like the idea that like they were so like the wild and raging battle magic of their planet swept through them, and they no longer became like they weren't one person. They were a collective. And it didn't matter what they were doing in that moment, if they were busy pegging a night, if they were holding a champagne flute, or, you know, like just getting a raging hard on about like war or whatever it was, right? Like whatever they were discussing, everything in that moment stopped and they were transformed into this thing, which means that at the moment that that thing no longer exists, they go back to exactly as they were prior to being swept up in it.
True.
And I love that mechanic.
Yeah.
I love it because it does. It paints such a perfect picture of like they were this horrible, terrible weapon that was going to squish all of they were just going to roll right the fuck over them and turn them into pancakes and squish the blood out of their bodies. And now it's like they're just a bunch of fucking bureaucrats, and these people are sick of it.
They're sick of
their bullshit.
You know
they're
what?
all gonna die. I love it.
I think this is like a fun little like end of part one. Like this whole half of the book has been hell. Here's a little fun, a little silliness. Like, not only do they beat the burrow boss, but actually like upon killing the boss itself, there is a stage 2, but it's not hard. It's just like, here's some extra XP, go farm it.
Absolutely.
But then I think the shadow of that is, if this were a level 3 burrow or floor 3 burrow boss, these would all be highly capable monsters ready to fight.
Oh, absolutely, no
so
doubt
I
about
feel
it.
like it is both like a bit of comic relief and silliness, and but also a bit of foreshadowing or a reminder, like, yeah, this is only the first floor. So like it seems like pure victory is what we should be feeling, but I'm also like, ooh, this doesn't bode well. Like they cheese the hardest part, and they're lucky that phase 2 was really easy.
I mean, it is still the first floor.
It is still the first floor. So anyway, those are kind of where my head's at. And I don't know, as someone who maybe you haven't seen this show, but Hunter x Hunter, I know
I have not watched it yet. I know you and Andy were on a tear there
I'm
for a
obsessed.
minute.
Well, and Travis loves Hunter x Hunter too.
Yeah.
Hunter x Hunter does such a good job of being like, yes, classic anime shonen tropes, but at the same time turning them on their head in a way that you may not even realize is happening. Like one of the biggest and longest arcs of the 2011 anime, you actually there are times during that arc where you are not rooting for the protagonist and he feels like he has become the villain. Like truly. And as a fight might break out, you are rooting for the person that is the protagonist's greatest enemy. Like they are painted by the camera as more sympathetic than the hero in that moment. And then it twists it on you and reminds you that the protagonist is a 12-year-old boy and completely helpless.
Oh my god.
Yep, it's wild. Okay, anyway, back to this. I love when media is like, this is the emotion and feeling the camera wants you to be feeling, but the context and subtext actually want you to be feeling the complete opposite. I love when writers do that. Like, we should be feeling victory here as they beat this boss, but I also have this nagging at the back of my mind, like this feels like it's actually reminding me that they're lucky, that things are only going to get harder from here.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we still have a chapter and a half to get through.
Oh my god. No.
Yeah. So we should keep moving. Okay. So, or I'm sorry, we have one chapter to get through, which kind of has two different scenes. So they win. There is fanfare, and yet nobody is saying anything. Like they are like hanging their heads. They are surprised, relieved. It's not really clear. I think the big thing is the fact that Chris falls to his knees, he hung his head low. We just looked at each other. Nobody's saying anything. Imani fed Yolanda a health potion, again, because she's low health, and the woman sat up, wobbling, holding the side of her head. Agatha shuffled towards me, shaking her fist. Half of the woman's head was caked in blood, and she didn't seem to notice. So we got that last line of like, they were slaughtered, which felt like victory. But then here it's like, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like they just went through something horrible.
They did go through something horrible.
I think they're all like we could have just died there. Like our thing barely held together as long as it needed to.
Don't forget though, like the majority of them haven't done battle like this.
That's
like,
true.
They've been protecting, you know, the elder care facility people most of the time, and they've encountered like maybe a handful of bosses, but probably nothing like this on this scale. And not only that, but like after they defeated the boss, it was large scale slaughter of these literally defenseless assholes.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
that's
they're
true.
just like, and so like, yes, they won, but like at the same time, the majority of their points and their levels probably came from having to kill the other elder care facility people.
Yeah,
They got the majority of their points from doing a mercy,
this
not
is true.
from. So like
Yeah.
yeah, so they're in like this like after battle stupor, and they're
Yeah.
covered in blood, and it's just like, oh my god, what did we do? Like,
Yeah.
and they're realizing too, like the rest of the game, they probably also realized like, oh my god, it's just gonna get harder. This is still just level one. They're just trying to get down a stairwell. So like, yeah.
Yeah. And in true Matt Dinniman, Dungeon Crawler Carl fashion, the raw emotion is gleaned and then moved past quite quickly because Agatha shuffles over to Carl, covered in blood, and says, "Give it back." She cries,
Yep.
"Give me my shopping cart back." This immediately takes us out of the raw emotion that is highlighted right at the start. Carl pulls out the shopping cart, drops it on the ground. It crashes loudly. Hey, she checks to make sure he didn't steal anything. And Carl says, you can put all this in your own inventory. You don't need to wheel it around. Yolanda says she hasn't gone through the tutorial.
Nope.
The small woman, who still had blood all over her face, pulled out a cloth and cleaned off Agatha's. This is Yolanda. Yolanda, telling Carl this, she hasn't gone through the tutorial, starts cleaning the blood off of Agatha's face, not her own. That really struck me. Yolanda, who also almost just died. I also noted the plan worked wonderfully, didn't it? Even if it didn't happen as envisioned, even if all of the damage they took probably came from the structure that they built, it did save them. The last mob that they fought was a level 8 Tuskling Dominatrix. I'm also just now noticing the little photo or little image sketch at the front of this chapter is what looks like an orc, but it has a ball gag tied around its mouth. And I love that, like, it would have been really awkward to do this. Like, you have to put the ball in the mouth and then like put the straps behind the tusks.
Yep.
And then tie it around back.
I love that.
Jesus. So they loot the Tuskling Dominatrix, who holds the boss loot, which contains a burrow field guide.
The AI seemed to be doing a whispery David Attenborough impersonation as he read the description of the item. Burrow Field Guide. Ah, look at you, the intrepid explorer. Alone, lost, afraid. But there is no reason to be frightened. Not today. Not now. Not when the trusty field guide has added monster types to this area of the map. Now, when you gaze upon the unknown, that fear is somewhat lessened. Instead of delving into the strange, mysterious dark, being devoured by an unseen horror, you will now know exactly what it is as it chews upon your tasty innards.
Ridiculous. Shout out to David Attenborough, narrator of the Burrow Field Guide.
Now you'll know exactly what it is that's killing you. Good job. Yeah.
Carl pulls up the map. He can see that the area immediately around and presumably the entire borough now has like lines that divide up all of the neighborhoods, like so you can see where their endpoints are and the divisions. He can also see what types of mobs are in each neighborhood, even ones that they haven't seen or been in. They can even see the range of levels. He sees a neighborhood they haven't been in has level 2 to 5 mobs called Axebeaks. Okay, cool. Elders, the elders of the facility starts showing up. We heard a loud noise. What's going on in here? Oh my God, it stinks. Holy shit. Yeah, I was old, but now I'm from Minnesota. Yeah. Carl starts taking a look. He notes that the Tusklings unfortunately don't have shoes. And he grabs a tuxedo that is covered in blood and guts and puts it in his inventory for some reason. Gross. Carl is surprised that these aliens from another world are wearing tuxedos, since, quote, tuxedos are from Earth. Brandon says Mistress Tiatha, our guide, tutorial guide, mentioned that the Meadowlark folks mentioned to all of us that the Syndicate seeds worlds and leaves people behind to guide cultural development of the seeded world, including inventing already written works. I immediately thought of, J.R. Tolkien is just of the Syndicate. The Lord of the Rings was written on another world many millennia ago, probably. Happy birthday.
Probably.
The happy birthday song. Like, who knows what else? The Bible?
Absolutely.
The Bible? Who knows?
Exactly.
Drugs? Alcohol?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's wonderful because it opens it up to all of these things which we think of as being like common. Like, how can they know about it? Like, it's like,
yeah, like orcs
because they
and
want us to know about
goblins
it.
and yeah. And it's basically described as like, oh yeah, they seed common ground so that they can join the galactic community, is basically what it seems like Mistress Tiatha was saying. But it also sounds very dubious. They loot stuff, including an enchanted ruby necklace, and the leather strap vest thing that was on the dominatrix and other courtesans, called a peg harness. Imani finds an enormous strap-on dildo, clearly also seeded by the Syndicate. She disgustedly drops it. Donut hops over and takes it into her inventory. Everything, right? Everything. Carl confirms. They salvage what remaining ninja stars there are. Carl sees that his inventory tab has a new tab. Worthless garbage. Carl notes that he looks for evidence of the past crawlers that had come in here and died before. He doesn't even see X's on the map where crawlers have died. Like, I think he saw Rebecca, an X on the map there that led him to her body. He suspects that there might be a time limit on crawler bodies. I suspect maybe it's an effect of Burrow Boss layers. There seems to be a lot of protection, like protecting people from coming into Burrow Boss layers. It might stand to reason that like they don't want you to come in here and just like loot everything that a boss basically could have, quote, claimed by game logic.
Right. Because like then you could claim the weapons of every player that died.
Right.
Prior to that, and that would be an unfair advantage.
And the reason I suspect that rather than the time limit is to encourage people. If you want someone's stuff, kill them. Take it yourself.
Yep, that too. Exactly.
I could there is a menace in the design of this dungeon, especially as it has put like in some of the design pushing people to PvP. So I would expect the latter, but it's Carl's thought that there's a time limit and that, you know, his instincts tend to be right. So it'll probably be a time limit, but I wouldn't be surprised if he turned out to be wrong. So
that's right too.
The force field around the staircase is gone. 5 hours and counting. It took longer than I expected. The Meadowlark staff immediately start grabbing their elders and letting those in the safe zone, partying it up until the end, that they could go down and party it up somewhere else. And there is a conversation quietly between Carl and Donut about what comes next that I think is very important.
What do you want to do?
Whatever do you mean?
We're going to go down those stairs, and it's going to be a whole new floor with new challenges. We can either stick with these guys, or we can keep doing our own thing.
Oh, Carl, how is it I know what you're going to do before you do?
I looked at the gathering group of elderly folks, and I nodded. Shit. God damn it, Donut, I said. She was right, of course. What was the point of living if I couldn't live with myself? I reached into my pocket and I pulled out my last cigarette. I looked at it for a long moment. I popped it into my mouth and I lit it. It tasted like ash.
I suggest we do what we've been doing. It doesn't have to be one or the other option. We set up a place for them to remain safe, and then you and I go out and do our own thing. We can keep our own party and set up a group chat with the others. I know how to do it now. When we find the next set of stairs down, we go get them and bring them with us.
I grinned down at the cat. I knew there was a good kitty in there somewhere. She bristled.
If it were up to me, I'd leave them all. But I know you're a softie. Besides, if we get them down to that third level, we'll need someone with thumbs if you're going to turn into a cat.
I'm not turning myself into a cat. I couldn't even if I want to anyway. Mordecai said so. I dropped the cigarette, unfinished. I ground it out on the floor. I went to a knee and patted her. She let me. By the way, I've been meaning to ask you. Who's Ferdinand? Donut pulled away at that, her tail swishing.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Whoever that is, he sounds like someone awful. Wait. Where's Agatha?
That was a long clip, but I think it's really important because it hits a lot of things and also like continues on the gas pedal, even though the boss battle is over, because it is moving us forward into the next floor of the dungeon very quickly. Where's Agatha? What's going to happen to Agatha? She must have gone down. Yeah, I think this kind of puts a nice, neat little bow on kind of the ethical and moral stakes of this whole situation. Not just like what has been, but like moving forward. And it, I think, really highlights Carl is more in the moment than Donut is, and Donut is anticipating, like, while Carl can anticipate what's going to happen in a boss fight and strategize, Donut is strategizing in the more like long-term stakes of the dungeon and what it means to be with this group and who Carl is. I also think she may or may not be invested in the stakes and also on the same page as Carl morally. I think she's like, she says, like, if it were up to me, I'd leave them all behind. I don't believe that.
Not at all. No.
I mean, well, maybe. I don't know. I think if Donut were by herself in this dungeon,
I think that if Donut were by herself in the dungeon without Carl, she would absolutely be seeking out other people to roll with.
that is
She would
true.
be looking for, like, she's not, I mean, she loves Carl. Carl's her dad. You know what I mean? Like, that's her dad. So, like, she loves Carl, but she's also a cat, and she's just kind of an asshole because all cats are assholes. But she's also only been sentient for several days.
Yeah,
and
like 3 days, 4 days.
Exactly. And in those days, you know, even though she remembers the life that she had prior to this, right? It's like she's still kind of processing and like taking all of that information in, and all the things that she watched on television and all the things that she witnessed, you know, between Bea and Carl. And, you know, and she's forming a personality slowly, but at the same time, she is still very much like a little kid.
Yeah.
She's a child. She's basically like a child who has had all these experiences and is kind of like, she's putting her own puzzle pieces together. So, like, yeah, even though she talks that big ass talk, like, fuck them, we can do this, let's get the hell out of here. Absolutely not. She would never.
That's fair.
She just wouldn't.
I think I forget to keep that in mind, that she is still, I mean, even if she had been this intelligent her entire life, she's only years old. Like right. A single digit, probably years old.
Yeah. She's just a baby. She's just a little girl. She's just a baby.
Yeah. Even if Nova had 40 charisma and 15 intelligence, she's still my baby.
I was gonna say, I don't feel like Nova would be as manipulative as Donut is.
No, Nova would be like, what do you want to do, Dad? I just want to be safe. I just want to be okay. And I'm literally tearing up thinking about her being in this situation. Like, the thought of Nova being in distress makes me really upset. One thing that I didn't prepare as much as I think I really wish I had is I really wonder about what these cigarettes mean. Like, they just get highlighted so much. They probably don't mean anything, but like, we've never heard Carl describe them as tasting like ash and him like not finishing one. I don't know if there's like a theme, like a really buried theme there. Probably not, but
maybe not.
Also, like, cigarettes are kind of like a self-indulgent thing that aren't very healthy for oneself. And it's interesting that right as they conclude this kind of like heroic arc, he is consuming the last one he has, not even finishing it, not really enjoying it. Right.
Like, the idea that this was something that he enjoyed previously, like before the world collapsed.
Right.
Because is a smoker. And like, you get to this last cigarette, he's not hoarding it. He's not savoring it. He's just like, gross, So like,
I'm not a smoker, though growing up working in a family business with a lot of like blue collar factory workers, basically manufacturing workers that took lots of smoke breaks and hanging out with lots of those people while they were on their smoke breaks. I've been around smoking. I understand some of those habits a little bit from a secondary perspective. I found this interesting, given that.
I would offer my own perspective as well, because I do vape, but I also was a previous smoker. And I will tell you that working in the service industry, oftentimes, the only way that you could get a break was if you were smoking a cigarette. If you were like, I'm gonna have a smoke. That's like a socially acceptable way. But if you're like, I'm going to take my legally mandated 15-minute break, boss, they're like, nah, can you take it later? But if you're like, I'm going to go have a smoke, they're like, all right, see you in 5. You know what I mean? It's a way to an extra breaks. And this was something that, when I worked in service, it was like, you could take a dozen smoke breaks a day, bro. Like, that's extra time on the clock. You still get your 15s, but a lot of times those get delayed because there's an emergency or whatever.
That is fair.
There's always 5 minutes to squeeze in an extra square. So like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that, there's something to be said about that. But I do like the idea that like he got this last cigarette and he doesn't savor it. He's just like, fuck it, this is gross. Tastes like ash.
Yeah. I find it kind of funny, especially given that earlier in these chapters, like he grabbed an entire like cabinet and found like a bottle of Johnny Walker in it because like he could just they probably are few and far between, but there's probably other cigarettes down here.
Oh yeah.
Like there's gotta be like a convenience store turned into safe zone.
Absolutely.
There has to be, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if they found other cigarettes and it continued to be a little bit of a motif, or something. We'll see. Okay.
See.
So, yes, Agatha disappears. They don't see her. They don't find her on the map. And they suspect she has gone down the stairs, which weren't stairs, but a long ramp. These stairs have already shifted. I wonder if the system is already anticipating elders coming down it. Okay, here's the plan, I said to Brandon later. After we finish examining the stairwell, we're going to go down there and make sure the area is clear for you and your people. Do you need help with your people? No, we got it. You don't want to go and open your boxes first? I do, but the closest place to do it is pretty far, and I don't want to tempt fate. We're going to go down, find this closest safe room. And once we do, we'll carve a safe path to it. Okay, then, Brandon said, and he held out his hand. Thank you. I mean that. I shook it. He then went to his knee and scratched Donut. You too, Princess Donut. Of course, sweetheart, she said, pushing her head against his hand. Oh, Brandon said, and try to find Agatha if you can. She's a crazy asshole, but she's our crazy asshole.
Yeah.
And then they head down the ramp, and there is like a block on the page with a line through it, like a white rectangle and then a line through it. And that's like I don't know what you call that in writing, but it's sort of like a break that denotes a dramatic change. Dramatic change. And we've seen dramatic changes happen in chapters, but without this. In fact, we've seen huge amounts of time pass and location change, but this is, I think, a marker that something is very, very different. They head down the ramp. They see a door like the one that they entered through the dungeon through. They also see a giant carving of a fish man. Carl thinks, go fuck yourself to this statue or carving. They go through the gate, but instead of it opening, there's a flash of light, disorienting nausea, and a quick feeling of falling. And then suddenly they are standing in a very plush and posh room, a round room. Carl's entire UI with like the map and status bar and health and items, it's all gone. There is a fruit basket, there's a couch, there's soft thick carpet and movement, and Carl can immediately tell they are on a boat, and he can even apparently gauge that it's about 100 feet long. He makes a fist to summon his gauntlet, which does summon, but then he unsummons it. He just, wants to feel safety. And then he thinks to himself the following.
What the fuck is this? I asked. But the second the words came out of my mouth, I knew exactly what this was. Donut was literally hopping up and down, her tail ramrod straight.
Carl, it's happening. It's really happening.
They both realize at the same time that something very exciting is happening. Carl's entire reason for living, apparently, as a human that is clearly not from Earth, but clearly a human, enters. They know that she is not from Earth because her head is about 3/4 as wide as humans on Earth. Their head is, meaning that this person is very elf-like in nature, and has a very cartoonish musical voice, probably because her vocal cords are shaped very differently. She apparently has very Asian features, though she probably wouldn't call them that because Asia is not a thing where she comes from. Her name is Lexus, and she introduces herself as the associate producer of Dungeon Crawler After Hours with Audette. Yeah. Audette would love to interview you, and Donut squeals with pleasure. And this is the end of part 1, ending on a huge high note.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm really curious about Audette and her connection with the Syndicate, or I'm sorry, the wow, we haven't said their
corporation.
Yes, thank you. We hadn't said their name all episode. The Borant Corporation, because clearly they were just teleported to this boat with Lexus and presumably Audette. So they have a hookup to be able to grab and interview crawlers. So, like, do they work for the Borant Corporation? Is their show all like paired with, or do they just review the main show as a sort of side show to the main one? Like, are they just one of, I'm sure, many podcasts remarking on Severance,
Ooh, yeah. I mean, we're just gonna have to. We're gonna
Yeah,
have
we'll
to
have to
wait
find
to
out.
find out.
It's so exciting. But yeah, that's how these chapters and part one ends, and it's a lot. It was really fast paced. I cannot remark on that enough. Like, it felt like the gas pedal only got
Yes.
lifted off of, the brakes were never engaged in these chapters. It was really fun. All of this entire whole part has been very fast paced and so dense, but really easy to digest and really fun. I am
Such a good book.
such a good
I
book.
can't, I can't wait. I can't wait for you to. It just. Oh, there's just so much more, and it gets like richer. And you keep asking these like really interesting questions, and some of them will be answered, and some of them won't. And I won't tell you which ones will and which ones won't. But like, you're asking these really incredible questions, so like, you're thinking about it analytically in like this really wonderful way. And I think Matt Dinniman also thinks about the series in that way. Like, while he's writing it, like, he makes a list of these things, and he does his like murder board with the red string, and like ties these details together like so seamlessly. It almost looks like he planned it, but we know he doesn't, and it's amazing. I'm so excited for this next part. It's so good.
Yeah, so we are officially halfway through. I did some math on I kind of used the audiobook run times of each chapter to kind of like calculate how long would, if we continued like a sort of a 3-chapter average, how long would it take us? It would be another 8 episodes or so, with a couple like 2-chapter-ish ones at the back end. I tried to keep it between like 35 and 60 minutes of like audiobook time.
Okay. Yeah.
But I also have not looked at the synopsis of any of the chapters in terms of like figuring out how to group them based on like content. So we'll talk more offline about that. We could even like start going with more chapters, but just like digesting or like covering less and less. I don't know how the part 2 like differs from part 1. Like, is there as much world building? Is there as much emotional content and stakes? Is there as much silly stuff to consume and talk about and laugh at? Like, I don't know.
There's definitely more of all of that, but I would say that part 2 is more action oriented. They're ripping through part 2. It's much more action oriented because, like, if you think about it, the first half of the book was level 1, like the first level.
Yeah.
The second half of the book is going to be level 2. So it's just gonna it kicks off a lot more action after this.
Yeah, looking at the first words of each of the next 2 chapters, I can see that there is a common thread. It looks like the 3rd chapter. Oh, interesting. There's a new thing at the start of the chapter that isn't time to floor collapse. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to leave it there and head out for the night. My puppy is fussing at me like she's dying.
Okay.
This mortal coil is shed if I don't go outside right now, Nik.
Take her potty.
I will take her potty. Thank you so much for hanging with me, Shannon. Thank you all so much for listening and watching along with us. Let us know in the comments what you thought. Shannon, you received a specific comment on a YouTube video the other day, yesterday, that I responded to. However, it was not related to this show, but to another one of our shows. If you didn't know, this YouTube channel also has, and this Twitch channel, have lots of other tabletop content featuring people such as Shannon, myself, and some friends of ours. There was a comment on the character creation episode of The Wild Sea, where there was a comment from about one of your characters. What did they say? Someone named Ren Skyju said, make the Leviathan your best friend, Shannon. Shannon is me, crying, laughing face. And I responded, Shannon has two modes. Mama Wolf, make the Leviathan your best friend, and murder hobo.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got two modes. That's absolutely the truth. I either want to feed everyone and then like walk through the forest in my bare feet, collecting mushrooms, making like friends, and then the other one is absolutely just to burn the village to the ground and then dance in their ashes. So yeah, I don't thank you for the comment.
Yes. Thank you, Ren Skyju. Or Ren's Kaiju? Unclear. But thank you. We appreciate your comment.
Kaiju, if I had to guess. Yeah.
All right, that'll be it for us. We'll catch you again in 2 weeks as we review chapters 28, 29, and 30, which will probably be a long set unless we can condense the content. I will do my best. I'm probably going to go read those right after I take my puppy potty.
I'll do my best.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.